Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. As the title of the video says, Scarlet and Violet is actually mid. No, it's not. I don't actually mean that, but while I've got everyone's attention, let me explain what I actually mean. Scarlet and Violet has a heap of mid-tier chase cards. Now, let me talk through chase cards for a second, and then we'll get into why I think the mid-tier chase cards throughout Scarlet and Violet era will probably mean good things in the future, particularly from an investing standpoint, because of course, that's what this channel is all about. So I don't know if there's any real rhyme or reason to this, but when I rank chase cards, this is sort of the scale I use. You know, if we talk about S tier or God tier, then A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, E tier. You know, E tier is just going to be your run-of-mill common cards. You know, your D tier is probably going to be reverse holo versions of your run-of-the-mill, just complete bulk. You know, a C tier is probably going to be something like just a regular V. You know, a B tier is probably going to be those cards that I'm talking about, those mid-tier cards, and this is where I rank them, you know, between sort of that $10 to $50 mark. And then A tier chase cards are a lot more than that. You know, for me, A tier chase cards are things like, you know, basically things that command, you know, $50 plus, or in a lot of cases, $100 plus. Things like Bubble Mew from Paldean Fates. Things like the, what's it called? Raging Bolt from, finally found the words for it, Raging Bolt from Temporal Forces. And that's why, again, good point there, all of these videos that I do are one take. I don't sit back and edit it. Yeah, I add the pictures in, but I don't sit back and edit it. If I make mistakes, so be it. It's just conversation, isn't it? But then there's that S tier or God tier that sits above that. And for me, those are, you know, almost once in a, or twice in a section, twice in an era Pokemon card. You know, something like the Latios and Latios from Team Up, something like Umbreon VMAX from Evolving Skies. These will just go down as God tier chase cards, you know, cards that are just worth so much money. And the big question is, have we really seen a God tier chase card yet from Scarlet and Violet? Greninja's really good. Is it an A tier, or is it like an A plus tier? I don't think it's quite S tier or God tier yet, but we'll see what happens, eh? Anyway, on to this video, talking about mid-tier chase cards. This is one thing you might not have noticed, that Scarlet and Violet actually has a lot of mid-tier chase cards. So those are chase cards between $10 and $50. I'm going to run through some examples, but also compare this back to Sword and Shield. And I actually want to start off with Sword and Shield really quickly. So Sword and Shield, particularly the end of it, when we had those trainer gallery / old art sets, you know, people, the consumers, the collectors, the investors just absolutely went bonkers for those sets. Not only did you have really, really strong chase cards in sets like Silver Tempest with Lugia, Lost Origin with Giratina, Astral Radiance with the Machamp, Brilliant Stars with the Charizard, not only did you have that really, really strong hit to try and chase, but you had a lot of these ancillary hits. You had that trainer gallery, which when you're opening booster boxes and you didn't pull that mega hit, you still felt like you were getting value for your money. Now, you might say, well, Sword and Shield would have had a lot of those mid-tier hits, you know, a lot of those $10 to $50 cards. And that's probably one of the reasons why their booster boxes have shot up so much. And the actual answer is no, they didn't. Silver Tempest, right? They only had five cards between $10 and $50. Lost Origin, this is the one that was really surprising. And an example from Silver Tempest, you know, Regidrago, the alt art, is an example of a card that falls between $10 and $50. Lost Origin, it also only has 5 cards between $10 and $50. So there's actually not a lot of depth of chase to Lost Origin. You've of course got the Giratina and the Aerodactyl, and then there's only 5 cards above $10 after that. An example of one, is, of course, is the Pikachu V. Now, I won't go into the rest. Fusion Strike's another example, though. I won't load up examples of cards for these, but there's only 6 cards between $10 and $50. Brilliant Stars has the strongest trainer gallery out of all those alt art trainer gallery sets, the last 4. That has 11 cards between $10 and $50. And Astral Radiance, believe it or not, has 12 cards between $10 and $50. But on that, so it seems you average sort of per set, you know, and these are good sets. These aren't bad sets. You know, about 8 cards between $10 and $50. Those mid-tier sets, those mid-tier hits, I should say, there's not too many. This will surprise you, though. Let's start off with a couple of examples from Scarlet and Violet. Twilight Masquerade, there is 14 chase cards, mid-tier chase cards, between $10 and $50. One example, of course, is the beautiful Eevee card that you can pull, that illustration rare. Temporal Forces, there's 14 as well cards between $10 and $50. And a couple of examples, I really like the Metagross card, the illustration rare. I also really like the Ghastly card inside here. Just a couple of examples of mid-tier hits that fall between $10 and $50. Paldean Fates, another great set. 11 cards between $10 and $50. A couple of examples, the Gardevoir, for argument's sake, the Shiny Charmander, Paradox Rift. Now, this has a lot of illustration rares, and there's actually 15 cards between $10 and $50. A beautiful example, one of my favorite illustration rares is the Steelix. 151, 20 cards between $10 and $50. Again, a beautiful example of an illustration rare, the Dragonair. And Paldea Evolved, way up there with 18 cards between $10 and $50. Of course, a beautiful example, that Sleeping Alolan, it's not Alolan Raichu, it's just Raichu, isn't it? Yeah, Sleeping Raichu card. Point is, if we just look at good sets, these are good sets from Sword and Shield, not the bad ones, you know, not Vivid, well, Vivid's not terrible, but it's not great, you know, not Rebel Clash, not Darkness Ablaze, not Vivid Voltage, not Sword and Shield base. These are good Sword and Shield sets, and they have nowhere near as many mid-tier chase cards as what Scarlet and Violet has. Now, arguably, there are some very, very strong big chase cards inside the Sword and Shield era. Of course, the Giratina from Lost Origin, of course, the Lugia from Silver Tempest, the Machamp from Astral Rays, the Charizard from Brilliant Stars. Evolving Skies goes without question. Of course, Fusion Strike with the Gengar and Espeon. You know, of course, Chilling Reign with the Blaziken. There are big, big chase cards, but there's not as many mid-tier chase cards. So when I was sort of joking with that title saying Scarlet and Violet is just super mid, it's because it does have a lot of mid-tier chase cards. Now, the big question will be, what will this mean for the future? Now, when I think of opening a booster box, I sometimes think of the enjoyment or the fun factor I'm going to get out of it. Now, when you translate that to someone that's opening in a streaming platform, whether it's on YouTube or somewhere else, particularly if they're doing box breaks and selling the packs off, both the customers and the person producing the content and opening and doing the break is also thinking of that fun factor. What chance do we have to pull hits for customers? Now, and yourself. So now a couple of things come into play there. You know, there's sets throughout Sword and Shield that had super, super strong chase cards, and people would go Giratina hunting or Lugia hunting or Blaziken hunting like Cool Trainer Ryan did from Chilling Reign. And you can just end up so incredibly disappointed where you're opening 10 booster boxes and really not pulling a great deal. You know, I just think in the future, when it comes to illustration rares, you know, these cards, yes, they're not massive, massive chases. The Magikarp's an example of one that's a really strong chase, but they're not massive, massive chases. The pull rates are pretty good, but they're commanding a really good price still. And a lot of them, to multiply that, because of, I suppose, arguably how rough some of the print qualities are, you also get that extra grading play as an added layer on top of that. Some of those illustration rares that might be, say, $12 US as a raw card can sometimes end up being north of $100 US as a PSA 10. So I just feel that having this depth of chase to Scarlet and Violet is really, really going to add value to these booster boxes in the future. Now, I suppose the home run will be when we get the double play, isn't it? You know, when we get something like 15 to 20 cards that are north of $10, you know, between that $10 and $50 mark, that B tier chase, like I said, and then we get a couple of A tier cards, you know, 60, 70, 90 US dollar cards, and then we have that mega chase. You know, we have that 200, that 300, that 400 US dollar raw chase. And I suppose the big question is that coming in a set like Surging Sparks? We know that has incredible, incredible popularity. People cannot get enough of pre-ordering those booster boxes in that set, particularly, you know, of course, the Pokemon Center Elite Trainer boxes as well, that beautiful Magneton promo. You know, will that be the set? Will that be the set where we have, and I don't think Pikachu is going to be an S tier chase card, but maybe it's going to be like an A plus tier chase card, something like Greninja. Maybe it'll be a $180 US card. Maybe it'll be a $250 US card. All speculation. Depends on pull rates and a lot of other factors. But maybe we get that. Maybe we get that big chase card. Maybe we get 3 of those A plus or A tier chase cards. Maybe something like the Hydreigon. Maybe something like Lycia's Appeal. And then we get just this massive depth of chase with some of those beautiful illustration rares. And maybe that's the set. Maybe that's the set that has it all. It has the A plus tier chase card. I'm not saying it's the next Evolving Skies, but when we look at that sort of equation of, depth of chases, A tier chase cards, and then an A plus tier chase card, maybe that's what we've been waiting on. I really think, just to summarize the video, I don't think people have put enough thought or attention into how strong the depth of chase so far is in Scarlet and Violet. And, I think really it's not because pull rates are harder. Like, getting an individual illustration rare can be difficult, but you're also pulling a fair few illustration rares. It's not like they're not much harder than getting a trainer gallery. I've done a video on that recently, but I just feel that, maybe it's the artwork that's pushing them along. It probably is, because they're such nice cards to look at. But I just feel that in the future, having this depth of chase is really going to add value to the set. And when it comes to investing, and I think that's why Surging Sparks is really taking off, because people can see the depth, they can see the A tier chase cards, and then they can see the A plus tier chase cards sitting inside that set. Maybe something you hadn't noticed regarding the mid-tier chase cards from Scarlet and Violet. I'm Michael, this is Pokeoz, and I'll catch everyone next time.